Leni Kinzli joins us from Nairobi. She is the head of external relations at the World Food Programme in Sudan. Leni, can we just rewind a little bit and briefly remind our viewers what's going on in Sudan that's leading to this crisis, just briefly?
So we are facing a humanitarian catastrophe in Sudan. 1 year ago, a war broke out, and this is pushing people into extreme levels of hunger. But before that, there were already so many people facing food insecurity. Around a year ago, it was around 12 million people. This is because of a pre-existing economic crisis, inflation, climate shocks, and also intercommunal conflict that was happening at the time. And now this war between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese Armed Forces has just exacerbated what was already this pre-existing hunger crisis. And this is extremely concerning, especially as the conflict and as fighting goes on makes it so hard for aid organizations like WFP to get to people where they need help, especially those who are trapped in conflict hotspots.
Yes, the numbers of people at risk are seemingly absolutely huge, 18 million according to the UN. Sudan, of course, is a massive country as well. Talk to me a bit more about some of the challenges in getting aid to these people in need.
So the biggest challenge is getting assistance through and delivering assistance to conflict hotspots like Khartoum, like Darfur, like Kordofan. And the specific example that we have as of recently is cross-border access from Chad into Darfur. So in Darfur, that is one of the most food insecure areas in Sudan. It is extremely difficult to get there. And we had bureaucratic impediments. We had the authorities in Port Sudan revoke permissions to basically transport trucks from Chad into Sudan. And just last month, there was a sort of breakthrough where we were able to start to move assistance and transport assistance to people where they need it. However, for example, one of those convoys took 3 weeks to reach its final destination to distribute to people because of a lot of the impediments, and also because there are so many different armed groups besides the 2 main warring parties that we are having to deal with on a daily basis to try to secure guarantees for that assistance to get to the people who need it.
Yes, I understand it's a very complicated crisis there with, as you mentioned, multiple different factions and armed groups. You also mentioned climate shocks, and I wondered if you could elaborate a bit more on how climate change is playing a role in this crisis.
So in the food security crisis, this plays a role because in some places, in some years, you will have above average rainfall, and in some years you will have below average rainfall. So basically, it's kind of this trade-off between droughts and floods. Like, for example, in 2020, it was a historic century highest flood in Sudan, where millions of people also, homes were destroyed, but that also affected a lot of farmlands. And so this is something that Sudan has been grappling with over the past years, which is exacerbating food security crisis. And now with the war on top of that, it's just making an already difficult situation even worse.
And with millions, as we've heard, of people, but particularly children stuck in the middle of it. Thank you so much for joining us, Leni Kinzli, on the News Hour.
Thank you for having me.